Welcome to the Industrial Edge podcast with me, Joe Haggis. In this podcast, we sit down with a broad range of professionals that are involved in a wide range of industrial settings. From maintenance and reliability professionals, facility managers, engineers, through to operations and production leaders, consultants and business owners who support all things that keep the modern world we live in safe, productive and efficient. We discuss the unique stories our guests have been on personally, while getting into some of the deeper details, challenges and opportunities that face them in their particular industries and areas of specialisation. Thanks for taking the time to listen. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Welcome, Ryan. Ryan Hammett is the director of Ignis Advisory, a business you started over a year ago now, right, Ryan? Maybe longer.
Just over a year.
Just over a year. So, business owner specifically within fire engineering, right, or a fire advisor, and I'll get you to talk through and debunk some of the myths for us, let's say non-fire people and more of our generalists out there. But yeah, welcome, mate. Do you want to give us just start with it? No, you're welcome. Do you want to just give us and start with just a bit of career to date, obviously, as I have been doing with many of the guests, snooping on LinkedIn profiles. Just give us a bit of, from what I can see, your background is design, consulting, and a mixture, work for a few different companies as well. Do you want to just talk through your career to date and, your bit of the journey?
Well, I guess fire is one of those ones that you never really, growing up, think that you're going to end up in. So I think like 90% of the other people in the fire industry, I sort of fell into it. I finished school in year 12 in Townsville, and large army-orientated town, so I thought I'd just join the army. And then my mum saw an ad in the paper and said, I can't really see you in the army. Why don't you give this job a go? And it was for a cadetship for a fire sprinkler fire services designer. And I thought, well, I always give it a go and fall back on the army if I don't like it. And that's where I started 20 years ago, pretty much right now. So still here, still liking it. And that was basically with a contracting environment. So large installations, major construction, minor works, install, test, construction company. And then I was in the construction industry for probably 5-ish years, and then went over to the dark side, to the consultancy fire engineering side of things, and worked with a few consultancy firms around the country, and helping fire engineers develop fire engineering reports, still focusing on the design of the fire sprinklers, fire hydrants, major fire services, fire detection alarm systems, etc. And then all the way over to end client side, working for a property owner, developer with a very large portfolio, looking after the national portfolio.
Yeah, nice. No, it's good. Good overview and a good mix, right? You say in the construction space, and then you say go to the dark side into the consulting space.
Yeah, look, it's a bit of a unique one, doing all three, which gives us, and particularly gives myself, really good understanding from cradle to grave, from thinking about things from a conceptual standpoint, or even beyond that now with the, the development side of things. So, how the structure's working in terms of, the investments, how the investment side of things works, how the development side of things works, buying land, selling land, all of that sort of stuff, developing a building, conceptual design, and then, the installation side of things, the maintenance and testing side of things, and then the whole life cycle cost as well, and the life cycle of each of the systems themselves. So it's been really good. I've enjoyed my time, and there's been a lot of hard work and everything, but it's been really good insight.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, right, it's, being in those different areas, construction, consulting, design, it makes you more well-rounded, right? You can appreciate different points of view, just looking at it from the same lens. Like, obviously, I'll probably focus in on more of the maintenance, the testing side of stuff. I know you spent a good bit of time, like you say, doing that for a large portfolio. Talk us through, first of all, what was the change? First question is, what was the change like from design, construction to consultancy? I'm picking up on what you said, going to the dark side, but what was that? I know you mentioned it gives you those different aspects, but what was the change you saw there?
It's completely different. in
Okay.
my experience. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're in the construction side of things, the early days, the conceptual design of the systems you're installing have already been sorted. So you're being handed a design by a consultant, generally speaking, and then it's your job then to basically refine and further the detail that the consultants have provided. And you've got no really uh, input in terms of that conceptual how it's all coming together, and things have changed a little bit from obviously from when I was starting out and where they are now. And D&C's come a lot into it now with the design and construct. Most projects now are sort of running on that, which tends to lead us down a pathway which is problematic, I think.
Okay.
But we can touch on that maybe a bit later.
Yeah.
The Yeah, and so because of that, your standards, are 2.18. You're locked in. You're doing the sprinklers. You've basically got the design set for you, and it's your job just to refine that and coordinate that. What you don't really get is that upfront. BCA perspectives and understand how the other services are coming into play, how that building is being developed from, an architectural standpoint, and all the input that all the other services have from a conceptual standpoint. And then I remember, sitting in my chair thinking, I've got this covered. This good sprinkler, fire services designer coming over to the consultancy side of things, and remember sinking into my chair on the first day thinking, I don't know anything. And that's because as well that like the industry is being left up to its own to do the training for specifically for fire services. It's not like you can walk into university tomorrow or back then and get a degree in fire services side of things. So it's up to the on-job training, and it's up to the organisations and the individuals in order to provide that training. So if I'm sitting next to Joe, and Joe is a very good designer, and I've learned everything I know from him. Um, I walk away thinking I know everything, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's a real problem with the industry and what we're facing at the moment with licensing and qualifications and stuff like that. So that was really big in my experience and how I felt. Yeah, the change was quite drastic.
Yeah, nice. No, you mentioned yeah, a good few challenges in there, right? I think like you say, especially in Australia, people listening to this outside of Australia, Australia from my perspective is very highly regulated from a licensing perspective. I'm not sure how would you view like Australia on the, let's say, on the world stage from a maybe holistically from design, fire engineering, and even maybe a second point to that question is just to be able, can you lay out for people, again, for myself, right? Much more of a maintenance facility manager generalist. Can you lay out like the different buckets of fire engineering, fire protection, those sort of nuances? Just
Yeah,
do you bucket them up? How does that look?
it's a good one because everyone says fire and we all go into the same bucket. Fire is a niche within a niche, right? So there's not a hell of a lot of guys out there doing it. And there are different people in different organizations doing different roles, and they're very different. So if we take fire services as an example versus fire engineers, fire services are looking at the physical items which are installed on the site. So you walk around, you'll see a fire hydrant system, smoke exhaust system, fire sprinklers, detection. That is fire services or fire safety measures, and they're the design. And the designers who are responsible for making sure that they fully compliant with the Australian codes and the NCC, the National Construction Code, which is the framework that we work to here in Australia. And then there's fire engineering, and fire engineering is although they work together, they're very different. So fire engineering is a process where you, um, as an example, you might have a building. If to fully comply with that building might not be achievable, and that might be for a range of reasons: buildability, scale, land constraints, building constraints, cost, even sometimes. So what you do is you say, well, we fully can't comply with the building code under these clauses, and you basically write a report. That report goes through a process. Get a building certifier or a surveyor involved. Fire engineer will write a report, and you sit down with the fire brigade, and you basically have a bit of a negotiation through an fire engineering process or fire engineering report process. And then it's a bit of toing and froing and negotiating with the fire department. And then they'll say, yes, we're happy with this, provided that we get X, Y, and Z. That report is then formalised. And basically what that happens is then it supersedes the BCA or the NCC. And then that's the document that you work towards. So that whole process is done in conjunction with the fire services guys, but they're very separate in terms of the outcomes.
Yeah. And BCA, for anyone else listening, Building Code Australia, right? I think
Building Code of Australia, it's now called the National Construction Code, or the NCC.
Yeah.
I've just got a bit of a habit of calling it the BCA. It's got a bit of ring to it, I think.
No, awesome. It's no, it's good. A good explanation, right? Probably going more down the, like I say, the path. Probably again, more the audience would probably be more people in maintenance, facility management.
Yeah, and it's even split.
Say.
It's even split more. So if you look at the contracting and the maintenance side of things, then it's split down to teams within. So you might have a construction team who are looking after major construction projects. You might have a minor works team looking after fit outs and anything that might have a flow-on effect from the major constructions department. And then you have the inspect and test guys. And then within those, you've got a separate team, and you've got a wet team, and you've got a dry team. And the wet team is looking after your sprinklers, and your dry team is looking after the detection. And so each one of those operate, within their own little worlds as well. So, and again, we're all just thrown into the fire bucket.
Yeah, but there's so much more to it, right? Like you say, it's a niche within a niche. I think that's a good way of putting it. No, that's good. That's good. Good overview. Good explanation, right? As well of fire. Again, it was something that I had to quickly get my head around as I moved into a few different roles at Amazon. But it's a big topic. Yeah, it's a massive topic.
Well, it is.
Right?
I mean, and it's life safety at the end of the day, right? So what we're talking about is literally making sure that people can go home. And the whole NCC is written around life safety and making sure that we can achieve it. And so it is really, really important.
Yeah, nice. No, good, mate. Talk us through, changing, just going more into your, going into your own business. The past, like you say, just over a year with Ignis. Talk us a little bit about your business. What are the common sort of challenges that people that you work with are facing? Talk us a little bit about that, and maybe even your journey, right? I saw you recently hired a new start, which is a big milestone for yourself. So congrats, man.
Thank you very much.
Talk us through your journey from starting that up until today.
Yeah, so I guess working at a large property developer owner, realised that there was a bit of a gap in the market in terms of really providing that holistic advice and looking things from not just putting the blinkers on and looking at this immediate job which I've got in front of me.
I was just asking around, what are the challenges and problems your clients face and people that you work with face? And again, talk us through your journey. I talked about you mentioned you got a new hire as well, which is a big milestone. So talk us through that, mate.
Yeah, thanks. So look, working for a large property developer, I really saw a bit of a gap in the market, and that was that holistic advice for large scale property owners. And there's a lot of great guys out there in terms of consultants and contractors, but what we tended to find was that they'd have the blinkers on and they'd just be looking at things and they'd be focused on a specific task. And the flow-on effect of that, whether it be additional costs for maintenance, whether it be at the life cycle, we know we're putting in something that we shouldn't, or perhaps there's a better way of doing things, but it might, and suiting the project immediately, everyone did that. But as I said, the before and after was kind of an afterthought. So, so I started Ignis with that in mind, basically wanting to look at things holistically for large-scale property owners and making sure that we are considering things, from a timing perspective, working in with constraints from a budgetary and some of the challenges that they might be facing from the end user, right through to making sure that the right outcome is there long term and suiting whatever the property strategy might look like. So I pulled the pin and started Ignis, January last year. Working through that. First year's been, really great. Been quite humbled by the response, which has been nice. Yeah, this week we've managed to put on Dwayne Smith, which is fantastic for us. He's a really well-respected guy in the industry. Very, very smart dude, far smarter than I am. Very happy to have him on board.
Yeah, nice, mate. Yes, that's what you say, right? You got to hire people smarter than you, mate.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's it's and in this case that was it was an easy one because as I said he's a good lad as well. He goes for Carlton, but we won't hold that against him.
That's AFL for anyone else listening that's not
Yes,
aware. Australian footy, Australian
mate.
football,
It's the best. It's the
Aussie rules.
best. Yeah, yeah.
I'm struggling to get on board with that. I'll be honest with you, mate. I've been here 6
Really?
years now,
Oh,
and
come on,
I'm
mate.
struggling,
No,
mate.
no.
I'm struggling.
We'll,
I'm sorry.
we'll get you to a game. We'll get you to a
Don't
game.
mind a bit of rugby league.
Yeah, we'll get you to an Aussie rules game. We'll just make sure it's Hawthorn. So
There you go. Maybe I'm a closet Brisbane Lions supporter now. They've won the league, or was it last year?
that's it. You got to jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah, this is it, mate. This is it. Mate, talk us through. So we spoke a little bit about again the buckets. We talked about your business. Again, selfishly, maybe looking from a maintenance facility standpoint. Talk us through some of the challenges that you see facility managers, maintenance managers facing out there. Again, you spent a lot of time with with a large portfolio. Talk us through those challenges specifically around like what you see facility managers face or maintenance managers face. I'm sure, plenty of stories myself around some
Yeah,
of the challenges around fire that we found, and not least that big focus at Amazon was on reducing false fire alarms and just the
yep,
impact to businesses.
yep.
What do you see like a lot of the challenges, or the issues that you faced, and with all the FMs that you work with there?
Yeah, well, look, throughout my career, it's been quite interesting because it's really varied, and the fire systems and the integration to, particularly with automation now, and you mentioned false alarms, we have the ability to shut down the automation. And in some of these facilities, a shutdown might be $1 million an hour for the larger guys. So it's a real problem, false alarms. And there's unfortunately, the process that we have and in terms of the NCC requiring all these bits and pieces, particularly when smoke detection, it's challenging.
Yeah,
And look, the day-to-day stuff that facilities managers, building managers, and stuff like that might be seeing, again, it's very varied, right? So you might have underground leaks in your fire hydrant system. And again, throughout my career, I've been a part of some major rectification works because of a failed hydrant system. And you've got a pressurized system. Where that goes, particularly in a lot of older buildings, you see them, under slabs, and having a pressurized system under a slab just creates all kinds of issues. And there's some stuff even outside of everybody's control. If you look at New South Wales as an example, so the legislation up until it's next week doesn't even legislate AS 1851 for those listening, that's the maintenance code of the fire standards here in Australia. It's not even legislated. So it's up to the owner to make sure that they are engaging a contractor who is deemed capable and competent under their eyes. So, that's putting a lot of onus on potentially facilities managers and maintenance managers who are engaging contractors, and that'll have a flow-on effect even to the building owners. But for the life of me, I just don't understand, how we're in a position where a state with the population that it does have, and the infrastructure and everything that New South Wales does have, hasn't legislated until next week the latest maintenance standard.
yeah, it's something actually just been discussing this week, and we've been working on ourselves at Downer, right, to
Yeah.
share and get that information out as well. But yeah, it's a big topic, right? And again, so just explain to me then, good thought pattern that, because is that the same in every state in Australia? Just like as an overview, is it legislated in other states and just not New South Wales?
Yeah, so we have so there's a national framework. We've got the Act at the sitting up the very top. You've got the BCAs when you're building a building, and then each state has its own legislative requirements that come through. So in Queensland, we have the Queensland Development Code, and MP 6.1, I believe, legislates the maintenance standard, which is AS 1851/2012. You've got the EPNA in in New South Wales, which we're just speaking about, the regs in Victoria, and South Australia, Western Australia, and Territory. They all have their own. So, which again is frustrating because they all have their own licensing schemes for contractors and qualifications for design and all of this sort of stuff, as well as there are nuances for each of the states, but we are working to a national framework from a legislative standpoint, being the Act, the BCA, etc. So again, some frustrations there with the way that it comes together. I'd love a national framework if we could have someone, hopefully one of your listeners is in the right position there that can make that happen. So in New South Wales, the EPA haven't regulated that, and that's really where the issue is.
And just the EPA, sorry, if
Sorry,
you can
Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Yeah.
Okay. And then,
After
the way I've always saw it, and thanks, mate. Like coming over here, like I say, obviously being a POM, coming over here 6 years ago, it quickly came to me. It's like countries within countries, right? The way different states operate.
It is, yeah. Even the fire brigade. So the fire brigades operate very differently. Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah, and just coming back to, like you mentioned, right, false fire alarms. Again, I spent a fair bit of time whilst I was at Amazon trying to reduce these, right, and something that I think often gets overlooked. Again, a lot of listeners will be probably people in maintenance, reliability roles, maybe more on like the industrial side of things, equipment, conveyance. Now, when equipment like that goes down or fails, people put a lot of focus on, hey, systems that go down, a lot of focus on reliability, condition monitoring, being really proactive, should we say. Now, the way I always saw it was, when you have a false fire alarm, you're shutting the entire plant down for at least 45 minutes to an hour, generally speaking.
Yeah.
If you've got especially a large plant that, or a large site that that Amazon does in Australia now, and other large companies also have as well.
All warehouses now, they're getting larger and they're getting more complex across the board. And that goes to buildings themselves, but also what's happening inside. The automation now has progressed significantly, particularly in the last 5-6 years. It's really come about. Buildings are going taller, they're going larger, and with that comes more issues, particularly from a fire engineering standpoint. So you've got travel distance issues, where if you've got someone standing in the middle of the warehouse, they've got a long way to go to get out of the building. And the further they go, the more we need to do to help them to get out earlier. And that means having detection systems. That means having, larger sprinkler systems. That means having all of these sort of things. And to basically get early warning to start that process as early as possible in order so that person can travel out of the building as quickly and get out. So, yeah, it makes things very difficult with the large floor plates, particularly in the industrial sector. And then you've got the automation side of things, and you've got conveyors running everywhere. You've got high bay racking. So all of these sort of things impede your accessibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like you mentioned, right, automation within these sites are getting more complex. And now again, you're starting to see the automation starting to get linked into the fire system, right? Shutting down conveyance. You think about it. There's a fire and you still got the automation running. You're just spreading that around the whole building, right? Ultimately,
Absolutely.
with traveling systems.
I was just saying, if you've got a robot that's on fire and it's going from point A to point B to point C, we've now got 3 fires.
Yeah.
Our whole design purpose is around 1 fire, so it makes it very difficult when when you've got 2 or 3. So that's all these sort of things come into play. And I know with some of the other sites, these robots got aerosols on them as well, and so it makes it different, makes it difficult. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's becoming more complex, right? Talk us through some of the good stories you got, mate. Like challenges, whether that be things that people can learn. Again, maybe through the lens of like maintenance, facility managers, asset managers. Whether that is failures or again any sort of examples you'd like to share that maybe people could in those positions could really take away and think about how can I prevent that happening in my business or where I work.
So I always like to think the message that I try and pass on is what is the worst outcome that we can have in this situation, whenever decision that we might be making, considering its life safety. And the answer is, well, someone could die. So I always try and work back from there. And as a worst case scenario, I'm not sure about yourself, but I'm assuming that you don't want to be sitting in front of a coroner describing, why you've made a decision, or why you haven't done something you should have, or why you've done, nothing and you should have. So there's a and I think we all need to keep that in the back of our mind, and just make sure that we touch on that when we need to. And if there's a question, should we do this or should we do that? If you ask yourself, what would the coroner say? The answer becomes apparent pretty quickly. So I would encourage everyone to just, as I said, keep that in the back of their mind. But also, what is the opportunity for things to go wrong? So if we're looking at things, I used it as an example before, the in-ground hydrants. So they've become a problem throughout the country. You've got blueberry pipe, which tends to not last that long. It's an O-ring fitting, and it just fails on a regular basis, in my experience. And we've got a blowout, and then that blowout might have a flow-on effect. You might have some damage for some landscaping at a best case. You might have to readjust some car parking because now you've got a sinkhole. I've seen, a range of different issues, and going right up into the multi-millions of dollars in terms of rectification for in-ground hydrant. So I'd implore everyone, if there's an opportunity to take a pipe out of the ground and put it, somewhere where it's a little bit safer in the building, do that.
So you were just explaining where you can avoid hydrants underground, right? Put them overground. And I was just touching on designing for reliability, right? I think that's important. Designing for maintainability.
Yeah, and so if there's an opportunity for something to go wrong, it's going to go wrong eventually, right? It's just a matter of time. And we look at, as I said, the fire hydrant systems in ground. You fix a problem, you've inadvertently created another weakest link, and then you fix that weakest link, and you've just done the same. So it's this can that you just keep kicking down the road. And from a capex perspective, it has the opportunity to suck you dry. If you have a hydrant ring main within the building, and you have a look at it, and you say, there's the leak. I don't need to spend $60,000 trying to find it under all the hard stand and, cutting up driveways and impeding on customer access and all of these sort of things. It's, it's a much better outcome for everyone involved. And if you take that same philosophy and you think about things, like generally speaking, in a large industrial warehouse, we don't have much smoke detection, but with fire engineering, and because things are getting a larger floor plate, all of that sort of stuff now, and as I was saying earlier, the earlier activation of those means that people can start moving earlier. Yeah, you do, and then so you might have issues there with your detection system. I would always be questioning your fire engineer. Do we really need these? Is there another way of resolving these? Because if there's an opportunity to create the same outcome by having a different process or a different service or whatever it might be, then start exploring that. Really ask the questions of your designers and your engineers.
It's a good thought, and something I'm just thinking about, and again keep coming back to a focus on reliability, maintainability, should we say? Like is it fair to say from like a fire engineer's lens and like you say, the way it's approached, reliability maybe or maintainability takes a bit of a backseat compared to like life safety ultimately, making that building as safe as, to protect people, protect property. Can you explain maybe to people that are listening, like, is there much thought that goes into the reliability of systems? Is there much maintainability thought from a fire engineer? There is. Okay, good. That's good to hear.
No, definitely, because without that reliability, there isn't a system. So that's the whole reason why we're maintaining the systems. In AS 1851, we're out there every month, making sure, testing the pumps, testing the fire sprinkler system, doing some pretty in-depth testing throughout all of the systems to make sure that the reliability is there. There's a large focus on making sure that the right products are going in. So as we progress now, there's a lot of stuff coming over from China. Some of that is good quality, some of that is not good quality. And so it's making sure that, from a product perspective, all of this is going into it and all of this is being thought about. And if I think about, a facilities manager, they might have an issue, whatever that might be. They're working with their contractor to make sure that they've got a solution for whatever that immediate issue might be. Again, no matter if it's a $1,000 project or $1 million project, I would be making sure that you're setting some boundaries and some rules around what you're expecting. And then even if for a $1,000 resolution, you're probably not going to have a specification or some guidelines or anything like that. But as a standard business and an organization, I'd suggest that everyone should have some standard wording, which is going out to making sure that they're complying with the relevant Australian standards. They've done their own DD and some research, or reached out to a consultant or some suppliers to understand what they should be using. I look at fire detection alarm systems as well, and there's some sites might have 4 different brands and of detection systems on there, and it just makes life hell. If you can consolidate that down to a single brand, I'd be doing it. Those sort of stuff. Then you're getting consistency, spare parts, all of those sorts of buying power. Everything becomes a lot more beneficial. You're gonna have a better relationship with the supplier, and I think that's something that really needs to sort of be considered, because, as I said earlier, if you leave it up to the contractors, they might have a really great relationship with supplier A, and they're going to get a good price. The end client might not see that or be aware of that, but at least the contractor's going to do that because they're trying to make a buck, and we're all trying to make a buck at the end of the day. You can't be too upset for that, but it's just making sure that there's some consistency there and making sure that you are getting what you need.
Yeah, and like you say, right, thinking from the outset and giving some inputs into it, as opposed to just leaving it open for, again, whoever that may be, the fire service provider,
and having a strategy,
right?
Yeah, having a strategy, like, where do you want to go? What do you want to be doing? And sit down with your contractors, they're good guys. Sit down with them and work that out. Say, help us get to this point. We're hemorrhaging money over here. We don't want to be doing that anymore. How do we look at doing a long-term solution to resolve that? And sometimes that might mean spending a little bit more money now, but then that life cycle cost will obviously taper off and hopefully get to a point where you're not spending anywhere near what you're spending.
Yeah, that's always a challenge I found, is trying to influence. Spent a good bit of my time whilst I was at Amazon trying to influence, the design inputs, the design criteria around, again, focused on reliability, sustainability, and trying to really frame that up. And it can be a challenge, right, in terms of selling that, well, if you spend an extra 5% in CapEx, you'll save 15% in OpEx over however long. And that is, it's easy to sort of frame like that, but it's quite a hard sell sometimes when they try to really cap budget spend. And I understand. I think we all understand, right? We can't just keep adding and adding to our budget, but there's tension there, right? This healthy tension between CapEx investment and then also having if you really reduce your CapEx, generally your OpEx is probably going to be higher because the product might not be as high quality, not as well designed, not as reliable. And again, I always think about as well the systems and how they integrate. Like you say, different brands coming in. If you're using loads of different brands, thinking about how they all integrate and become a bit of a complex system in their own right.
Yeah.
And the knock-on effects that can have, right?
Absolutely. And, there's always a battle between, budgets and what's required. And, there's some challenges there everyone faces, no matter, in what aspect of the construction or maintenance industry you're in, you're facing these challenges. And, I think that's why planning becomes really, really important, making sure that you've got a plan, you understand what's coming up. We've got fire panels get discontinued all the time. So, what happens there? And if you've got different brands, again, you're adding some complexity there that it's just It's just not needed. So having a clear plan about what you want to be doing, where you're going, and how you want to get there, and sitting down with your contractor, they'll be able to give you a hand and work through with your budgets and making sure that it's right. You can talk to some consultants, if it's a larger project and you need to get that off the ground. And what we try and do is really work within. Now we're busy because we're trying to help our customers with their budgets. So we're trying to do that planning for them, and work them through and say, hey guys, look, we've got problem A, you're going to need X amount of dollars for this. That's not something that, any company or organization is just going to be able to pull out of their pocket and say, yes, there's a whole process. Well, why do we need to be spending it? Are you sure you need to be spending this? What other options have we got? And it's our job to go through and basically relate to our customers to say, look, we've gone through all the options. These are the best ones, and we can sit down and now work out what that framework looks like to, get your budget set up. We can talk to some suppliers. We can firm up that costing, whatever that might be, and then start to, get your budgets in. We'll give you the justification for that to talk to your boss and your boss's boss, whatever that might look like, and hopefully make that conversation a lot smoother and a lot easier. And I think if you have that conversation and, again, framing it around life safety and framing it around, hey, we've got a plan, that conversation goes a little bit easier, rather than just rocking up today and saying, hey, we need X amount of dollars. And,
Absolutely.
that's not going to fly too well in many organizations.
And you're explaining here is the way I see it, right? Is it ultimately taking a long-term view on things, making sure you're planning ahead. You're not just looking year to year. You need to look further than that,
Absolutely.
right? Ultimately.
Yeah.
And a simple example I always think is, again, maybe dumbed down, should we say, but is, annual fire testing versus your 5-yearly, comes up to your 5-yearly. It's probably, let's say it's double the amount that you're normally paying each year and people haven't budgeted for it. It's not been forecasted.
Yeah.
Or, how about books?
Yeah, 5-yearlies is a really interesting one. And there's a lot of ways, again, that you can plan up front for that. One is you can do a 5-year contract with your contractors. So it's included, and therefore, obviously it's going to significantly increase the cost of your contract overall. But you're looking at an included 5-yearly rather than an ad hoc. You're looking at an ad hoc, it makes it difficult as well because you might have an extinguisher, you might have 5 extinguishers in an office, and all of those 5 extinguishers are going to have a different 5-yearly date. So it makes it really difficult to say, okay, we're going to do all of our 5-yearlies this year. So that's why a 5-year contract, you can sort of navigate through that a lot easier, and you just know that everything's included. And by the end of the 5-yearlies, give me my list of completed tasks, and there you go. You've got them all done. You could also look to do a tender. You could tender your 5-yearly separately. You don't really want to introduce another organization or a contractor if you don't have to, but at least then you know that you're getting some competitive pricing because there is a bit of fat that goes onto some of them, knowing that there's a 5-year contract in that. Keeps them honest.
Absolutely.
So there's a couple of ways to structure that as well, and making sure that you're not just at logged with a 5-yearly of your fire hydrant system. Again, 5-yearly fire hydrant system, you require a hydrostatic test. That hydrostatic test, in my experience, again, there's always some issues there. And if it doesn't happen on the day, it might happen a week later or 6 months later. But generally, between that 1 to 6 months, you're going to see some issues. And even on a system that you haven't had before, you're going to start to see it. And then again, that's just a flow-on effect and a snowballing from a CapEx perspective and the money that you're going to be sinking into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of businesses, will often either run on sort of PO only terms or 12 monthly sort of contracts, right? And that's the challenge if you do that. And again, coming back to this, the sort of thought around thinking longer term, and again, that's the benefit of it, right? You're saving money over a longer term.
Absolutely.
And you're planning ahead, right?
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, and the contractors, they know a lot more about the site than you will as well, right? So having them for an extended period of time just means that everything works a lot easier. The relationship's better. They know the sites a lot more. They know your customers. So it does have a lot of pros. The con is that you're looking at a larger figure in order to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a challenge, right? I always found that balance of, again, I always use Amazon as the example of, if we had, let's say we had 12 different fire vendors across those buildings, not even getting into the fact that some of them may be landlord operated, maintained, etc. But that was always the challenge that I faced, was around, we've got this portfolio that was growing. How do we get the right balance between getting consistency of delivery from a vendor, and can we influence if our landlord was maintaining them to change, which often they might want to or they might not. And again, like, try to just get, again, reliability, consistency of outcome.
Mhm.
But that was always a challenge for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Mate, so we talked about some of the challenges, or maybe, I won't say frustrations, maybe frustrations you can say. I'll let you word it, but what are the opportunities for the fire industry to kind of adapt and overcome over the next few years? I know, obviously, like, we're both Brisbane based. Brisbane Olympics are coming up 2032. I'm sure everyone in your space is speaking lots
Yes.
and lots about that. But I suppose, taking a step back before that, what I'm trying to say here is, what are the challenges that frustrate you maybe in the industry, and then also on the other side of it, what are the opportunities?
Yeah. Okay. So, look, I touched on earlier the framework in terms of qualifications and licensing. It's got to change. I think as an industry, you look at how everything else is structured. For some reason, we're very different. And mechanical services, electrical, they all seem to work well and go into each other. And we've got organisations and associations, we've got state legislation, all having a go at trying to fix it. And there's a lot of work to do. Look, and they've tried to fix it, but it just haven't probably yielded the result I think everyone was hoping for. And so there's a lot of work that we need to do in that space as an industry, and making sure that we're doing this properly. And then if you look at the opportunities, there's certainly a lot. I think every single new building, over 500 square meters has some form of fire services in it. There's a lot happening all around the country, particularly in Brisbane. I think once the Olympics, we've got some plans in place. It's 100% locked in and certain. Things will start to happen pretty quickly. That'll be not just for the Olympics. Supporting infrastructure, hotels. We're going to have a larger population. All of these sort of things. Yeah, the infrastructure has got to be there to support that. So roads and all of these bits and pieces. So look, I'm really excited about what Brisbane can, hopefully deliver in the next, 5 to 10 years. And the Olympics are going to be the driver. We've got a real opportunity now to, I think Brisbane's a great city. I love it. And I'm from Melbourne, lived in Sydney, and Brisbane's home for me. So I'm really excited to see what it can do, because I think it's already a world-class city, but having the Olympics here will really put it into its own and make it stand on its own 2 feet, away from Sydney and Melbourne, which probably hasn't done yet. You go overseas and you're like, oh, are you from Sydney or Melbourne? That's never, you're from Brisbane. So I think that we'll have an opportunity there to really create something special, and hopefully the legacy out of that is, beneficial for everybody here in Brisbane.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I completely agree. Right, I'm in Brisbane, close to Brisbane, should we say? Yeah, I think it's a fantastic city. Right, I think it's understated maybe in some ways. I think it's beautiful. Weather's great. You won't hear me say a bad thing about Australia or Brisbane at all.
Yeah, I
I'm
was going
not
to say. I thought you were going to say
complaining
something
whatsoever.
about the weather. Then I was like, you're a pom, mate. So you
No,
can't
I,
complain too
I
much.
absolutely cannot complain, and I won't complain.
Yeah.
No, I love it here. Like I say, I've been here for 6 years. It's a brilliant place, but yeah, Melbourne bit too fresh for me. I think as nice as a city as it is, and Sydney. I spent 6 months in Sydney actually for a bit of time, but pretty busy place.
Yeah.
And I can't afford to get on the property ladder, but that's a different subject. No, brilliant, mate. I think we've come to the end naturally, but
Well,
I
thanks for
suppose
having me.
any. Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, mate. I think we've had a really good conversation. Got really deep into some of the topics as well, which is great. Um, Who should we get on next, mate, from your industry? Any recommendations around who we should get on next?
That's a good one.
Obviously, I'm doing it quite a broad. I know it's quite a broad podcast. People within FM, fire. Gonna have some people from more maintenance, reliability, HVAC, facility management. So quite a broad podcast, I know. But who should we get on next within your industry?
Well, look, there's a couple of characters. There's a couple of really smart people. And look, depending on I guess what you're sort of targeting. So, there's a guy called Brian Davies. He's an older fella. He ran ARA. Large contractor, national framework, part of a group which are turning over about $1 billion now, I think. So,
wow.
Mate, he's a good lad as well. So I'll put him forward if you want to have a chat with him. Older guy, knows, been around the block, created one of the associations and stuff like that. There's always Glodic, if you're up for a challenge. But he's got a lot of good insight, right?
He does.
But Peter's one of those guys that everyone in the industry knows him. They either love him or they hate him. But I love him. He's a good lad.
I do like him as well, and I'll say at the outset, work with Peter and his business Omni as well, right?
Yeah,
they've always been really good and very helpful to me as well. So yeah, I can't say a bad word to say, but he's a good character, like you
say. He's a funny guy.
Brilliant.
Yeah, mate, have a chat with those guys.
No, thank you again, mate. I appreciate your time. Again, I appreciate you being one of the first few. So, thank you so much.
Feel very privileged. So thanks for having me.
No, it's my pleasure, mate. And really good conversation. But yeah, thank you so much, mate. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Cheers,
Thanks,
mate.
Ryan.
Thanks, Jeff.
Cheers, buddy.
Talk soon, mate.
Take care.